Good morning, everybody. Keith Engel, TGI Sports Talk. It's the first Friday in February. It's hard to believe that we're here. We're going on our 9th month working remotely in my real world job. And sometimes it seems like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like it's been 2 years. But everything's going well there. I hope it's going as well as it can be in your world. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Weather's starting to turn a little bit more, well, not November-like. I guess it is November-like, but hopefully we don't hit December too soon. We got some snow coming this weekend, nothing major. I want to thank my guest from last week, Larry Farmer, former head coach of UCLA, a great player with UCLA during their great dynasty. We had a great conversation. I thank Larry a lot. Just to let you know, I've got Roy White coming up next week. We've got Todd Stottlemyre coming up in a few weeks. And then we'll have Christmas, and we'll probably do a New Year's show. Probably nothing on Christmas. Absolutely nothing on Christmas, but we might do a New Year's Day show, and I'll let you know about that more. So, again, I thank you all for being here. The groups that I share this to, I thank you for allowing me to share the content that's relevant to your groups. I thank all of you who are watching and will watch this as the week goes on. And hope you'll comment and continue to share the show with the people that you think would enjoy it. So with that, I'm going to bring in today's guest, Hank Gola. Hank's a sports writer, still contributing to the New York Daily News, and has written a book, City of Champions, which we talked about the last time Hank was on. And today we're going to talk a little bit about football, where we're at. We're getting to the stretch run for the playoffs. Pittsburgh's trying to stay undefeated. COVID's playing havoc with the schedule. Lots of other topics to talk about. Coaches in trouble. Coaches already gone. We'll talk about all of that, and then we'll touch on the Masters that Hank covered for the Daily News 2 here just a few weeks back. And with that, I want to welcome in Hank Gola. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning, Keith. How are you?
Very good. I want to, since I don't want to be the only jealous one here, I'll let my audience know that Hank's planning on playing golf at least one last time here today.
I am.
The weather's a little bit warmer where he is, not a lot. So he's not a fair weather golfer. Hank will get out there and rip it where he can.
The wind's supposed to not blow so hard, so that'll make it a little warmer. But this might be the last one. I'm going to squeeze in the last one. Then our simulators are coming into our club, so it's all indoor after that.
Oh, there you go. Well, the greens will be soft today, so you'll be able to hold the greens.
Yeah, they'll be muddy.
Yeah, well, you got that too. You're also not going to get a lot of rolls, so you have a trade-off. So let's jump into the NFL. We'll talk about the Masters, as I said, as we get through the NFL. There's so much to talk about. I mean, let's start at the very beginning, actually. When you were on with me a few months ago, we talked about the fact that no preseason training camps were truncated and much different than they were, and it certainly affected some teams. It definitely has affected my team, I think, the fact with no OTAs, no real training camps.
Yeah.
I mean, let's start with the fact that, and I'm not sure how much we talked about this in the beginning.
We were talking about you remember we talked about the Patriots and Dolphins, and I said the Patriots and Dolphins would probably be on even footing. I picked the Bills to win the division.
Yeah, you did.
And then I said, the Dolphins are actually above footing on the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Early a few weeks, now probably 2 months ago, there was another show that I go on Fridays after my show, and we talk Patriot football, and they talk about a lot of stuff, but I talk about the Patriots specifically on the Mac and Jack show. And I had said I thought the Dolphins were a year away, that they were going to be very good, because I think they've got a good coach for a change from the Belichick coaching tree.
Yeah,
and maybe they're heading in the right direction, and then they just took off.
Yeah, well, their defense is playing very well and getting turnovers, and I think I still think they're better with Fitzpatrick than Tua, but that was the plan going in.
Well, I thought they would have, it's funny. I would have thought they would have sat Tua for the year just from a health standpoint, to let him get a year, a whole year healthy
Right.
from that pretty serious injury he had last year. So
yeah, I think their offense does operate. I think they could do more things with Fitzpatrick, and he's a veteran guy, and I don't see Tua taking them far in the playoffs. I think with Fitz, they may get a little deeper into the playoffs than they would with Tua, but their defense is very well coached. It's interesting that so many guys have fallen off the Belichick tree and just crashed, like Matt Patricia, the latest one.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you wonder what Flores did different in Miami, taking the Patriot way to Miami. Obviously, if one of the reasons it doesn't work is because it works in New England because they win.
Right.
So you put up with a lot more of Belichick than you normally would.
Right.
And I think that was the case in Detroit. Patricia wasn't very well liked in the locker room, and not only this year, but he lost it this year, but he wasn't really well liked before that. Remember the one year they celebrated with mimosas in the locker room at the end of the season because they were going home and they didn't have to deal with him anymore. So that's one thing. And even Coughlin, when Coughlin went to the Giants, he had some success really early, but he's kind of out of that same coaching. He's out of the same coaching tree, but the same mold as Parcells was, being kind of a hard-ass guy. And if you remember, before the second Super Bowl they won that season, Mara brought Coughlin in and said, "You got to change things," and he had that committee of players and everything. Yeah. So he had a tendency to wear out his welcome as well, which he did in Jacksonville, and then was about to do that with the Giants, and he got one more year out of being the coach.
Yeah,
winning. After that, he kind of went down.
How do you think, Hank? And because it's been, they've had a season and no cancellations per se. But how do you think the league has handled the COVID situation in general?
Pretty good outside of I thought the Denver New Orleans game was a fiasco.
Yeah.
And that should never have been played. And I know they had their reasons for playing it, and Denver was apparently hiding some things. But in golf, you say you protect the field, right? You do things to protect the field. Well, they didn't protect the field in that game. You can't allow that game to be played under those circumstances while you're moving things around seemingly for the Ravens. Now, the Ravens lost the game anyway, the Steelers.
Right.
But still, now the Steelers are still in a bad scheduling spot. Look what it's done by moving that game to Wednesday. Now they've got to play a Monday 5 o'clock game against the team formerly known as the Redskins. And that's going to be that's a tough one. In fact, even though they're so much better than Washington, I think that's a good spot for an upset there, just because of the routine being totally thrown out of whack. And you saw that on Wednesday afternoon against the Ravens. They were kind of out of sync, the Steelers, and they really should have won that game by a lot. Well, in fact, it was a backdoor cover, so it killed me, by the way. But
I've had a lot of those recently, by the way.
You saw Roethlisberger at the end of the game. He said, we didn't play. They didn't. They just were out of sync. And I think a lot of that had to do with the schedule being just thrown here and there and being postponed. I don't know how many times the game was postponed. But it not only affects them this week, it affects them next week because, again, it's a screwy schedule. And they got to play on Monday at 5 o'clock now with I don't know how many days rest. So
they may have been the team. The Steelers may have been the team most affected by all of the schedule changes because this was the second time I think they really had their schedule thrown into disarray.
Yeah, they lost their bye week, and then Tomlin said that he's going to give them days off after Thanksgiving, and of course the Thanksgiving game was postponed, so they didn't get that, and it was just a mess. But hey, they haven't lost yet, so it hasn't affected them that much.
Given the challenges in front of me, you think they can run the table? They've got a couple of tough games ahead of them, but should they?
They
it's
do.
always a lot of pressure when you do it.
They do. I mean, look at the Patriots when they ran the table up until the last one. I don't think they have as good a team as New England did that year. I think they still have some flaws, but everybody is in the NFL these days. There's not one great, perfect team. But it's just so hard to do. Every now and then they come up flat. I think they got away with that. I think the game they could have lost easily was in Tennessee, and they kind of get away with that one a little bit. They got a win there. So yeah, look. I think still somewhere they're going to get bitten, somewhere along the line, and maybe that's going to maybe that's in the final game of the year. What's he going to do if they've got everything wrapped up and you're playing your final? Who do they have in the last game? Do we know that?
I can take a look here quick. Let's see. Let's see. Hold on. NFL. They have. Let's go skip ahead here. I always love doing this. It's great, great viewing for the audience, but happens a lot. Let's see. Week 17.
Browns? They have the Browns?
They have got. Come on.
You see the Browns and the Bengals
at Cleveland. Yeah.
At Cleveland. Now, very interesting game, obviously. But if they've got everything wrapped up, what do you do? Did you go for the perfect season, or do you kind of, And then, will the Browns need the game because the Browns are in a different kind of a playoff race? So that's going to be a question. If you remember, the Patriots' last game of the undefeated season was against who? Remember?
Giants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Was it MetLife or I forget?
They played in July.
Yeah. It was actually.
Yeah.
And Belichick decided to go for it, even though it didn't mean anything. And it was a great game, and the Giants kind of hung tough, and the Patriots pulled it out. But that game, because they hung with the Patriots, gave the Giants a lot of confidence. They knew they could play with them.
Right.
And by the time the Super Bowl came around, I think that was a big factor in them being able to play with beat the Patriots in that Super Bowl.
Well, didn't we have and I'm probably going back about, it's probably 8 or maybe even 10 years ago. Now, Peyton Manning was still with the Colts. Didn't they have a chance to go undefeated and they sat him the last week?
Yes, they did. Yeah, Tony, I guess it was Dungy. Yeah, Dungy was the coach, of course.
Yeah.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to see what Tomlin does with Roethlisberger. Again, you don't want to get the guy hurt, obviously. He's having one of his best seasons ever at his age, too. But
those remaining Dolphins from 1972 have to gather every week until until they lose now, so they can have their toes.
Except for Shula's not gathering anymore. But
now Shula and Jake Scott,
he would always pop the champagne.
Yeah, their circle's dwindling sadly, but it's an interesting tradition. Actually, I know some people find it annoying, and other people think it's wonderful. I mean, I think it is what it is. I think it's kind of cool, but.
Sure.
I would like to have had that 19-0 season, but obviously it wasn't.
I know. I covered. Since I was on like NFL duty, covering the big game of the week. I think I covered 13 Patriots games that year. I was constantly going up to Fox. I was like an Ersatz beat writer, and I would have loved to have seen the perfect season. I gotta admit, it was. I think the Giants did a perfect game. Played a perfect game that day to beat them. There were other factors. Brady had the ankle and all that, but and they came up with a really good game plan against the Patriots because of Brady's ankle, and they were sending pressure through the middle. If you remember, Kiwanuka as a linebacker was blitzing up the A gaps and all of that. They had a really good game plan against them.
Yeah, they did very well.
But yeah, that happened at the end. So
it's sticking, kind of returning, and now I'm down. I don't know if I continue the show. I've revisited one of the worst days of my life, and I guess if that's one of the worst days of my life, I've had a pretty good life.
Not too bad, yeah.
So, obviously, the Steelers are one of the teams in the driver's seat. The other probably the two best teams in football are the Chiefs and the Steelers, at least right now. And people are kind of sleeping on the Chiefs, I feel, because of the Steelers' run here. The Chiefs, I think, are still a better football team than the Steelers myself. How do you see that? Let's just assume it comes down to that. How do you see that playing out?
Well, it will probably happen in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So that's one factor. I think when you have Patrick Mahomes on your team, doesn't matter. I mean, you're a better team because of Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Because he could do so much. The Chiefs' defense still has question marks on it, and on week to week, I think you could beat them if you keep that defense on the field, I think you beat them. Keep Mahomes off the field a little bit. So that would be a really interesting game because the Steelers defense could do a lot of stuff. They set the edge really well, and they do really well against mobile quarterbacks. As you saw against, we didn't see this time because Jackson didn't play, but the first time. So that would be interesting to see how they would defend Patrick Mahomes. But they do really well against that, and their secondary is good. They've got ball hawks in the secondary, so it wouldn't be a slam dunk. I still think the Chiefs, because of Mahomes and because of Andy Reid, he's just a great game plan guy, and he'd be able to devise something, some pretty good schemes against the Steelers. But I also think the Steelers could probably do some things against the Chiefs defense. So,
it's funny. We talk about Andy Reid and his game planning. He does do some great things there. The knock against him, and he finally gets it off his back last year, has always been clock management in playoff games. But Mike Tomlin is a guy who flies under the radar. I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach who doesn't get his due.
Tomlin's a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah.
He's going to the Hall of Fame. And when you think of that franchise, they've had three head coaches since Chuck Noll. That's crazy. That's the Steelers, right? They've had two, Chuck Noll and then two more coaches, Cowher and Tomlin. I mean, no team in sports can match that record. It's such a amazing. The stability in Pittsburgh is amazing. And year after year, they come up with winning teams, even if they don't win it all. They're always a factor.
No, they're always competitive. I agree. Very underrated coach.
Yeah, so I think he is going to be a Hall of Fame. But he's going straight to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. For those of you just joining me, my guest is Hank Gola, tremendous writer for still with the Daily News. We're talking the NFL right now. Hank, so we've talked about the major contenders. We'll stick in the AFC for now. I mean, are there any other surprises in the AFC or people or somebody that you think can make a run to maybe surprise us in the playoffs?
The Raiders are a wild card because they're so inconsistent.
Yeah.
But they can do, Carr's having a really good season, and he's got some deep threats, and they can do certain things. And so that's one. I think the Titans proved last year that if they get Derrick Henry going and they follow that formula, they can go a long way. The question is, now last year they had a much better defense than they have this year. I mean, it's you can exploit that defense. But again, if you get behind Derrick Henry and just run the ball and things go your way, you could win some playoff games.
Yeah, he's a monster. They're one of the teams that I like, but I'm not a big Ryan Tannehill fan either. But
he's okay with Derrick. See, with Henry, he's okay.
Yeah,
it's almost like Cousins with Dalvin Cook. Cousins doesn't stink as much with Dalvin Cook running the ball because he can run the play action. And Tannehill's a pretty good play action quarterback as well. Yeah. And then you look at Buffalo. Buffalo's the other team that could make a run. They're a hard team to figure out. But
we definitely have some Buffalo fans that'll be watching this morning, so they're all excited.
But their offense could get going. I mean, Josh Allen and that offense that's pretty formidable. He's got some.
It's amazing their defense has stepped back. I mean, that was what carried them.
That's the weird thing. They won with defense last year. Their secondary was outstanding, and not the case. It's more of an offensive approach this year.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And how about you get the Browns? I mean, the Browns are 8-3, but it seems like they've lost all the good teams they played. But
Baker Mayfield's terrible. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
I mean, he misses wide open guys. I mean, he's just so inconsistent. And they have a great running game. They might have when you think about Chubb and Kareem Hunt, that may be the best combination of backs in the league, and they could do different things with both of Chubb's more of a power runner. Hunt's kind of a speed guy. They're both pretty good at catching balls out of the backfield. So they should be a lot better, even after losing Beckham. But Mayfield, I think, holds them back a little bit.
Any disappointments? We'll stick with the AFC for now. Any major disappointments in your mind that you're shocked at where they're at?
I think the Patriots, even though I didn't have that much confidence in them, I thought they'd be a little better. But then again, when you think about Tom Brady last year, and what they were able to do without anybody else on offense. I mean, they had no receiver. They didn't have any receivers last year. And now you stick Cam Newton in there. So you think Cam Newton's going to do a better job than Brady did last year? Probably not.
No,
he hasn't. And then their defense has taken a step back. That's probably the most surprising thing. I thought the Patriots defense would keep them in games, and they've been a disappointment. Now and especially their pass defense. I mean,
I was just going to say the secondary's been a major disappointment.
Major problem. And even Gilmore, who he's taken a step back. I thought he was one of the best corners in the league last year. So
he's playing like he played his first year here, where he wasn't very good when he first got there, and he's kind of stepped back.
A lot of that was learning the scheme.
Yeah,
I mean, it took a while. That's a major problem. That's on paper, but it's a recurring problem with Belichick's defenses at the beginning of the year. It's so complicated. It takes a while to adjust to it, especially with the younger players that they might bring in. So that would be one, but that would be a disappointment. The New England defense, and
they're still hanging in there. Every time I think they're dead, I'm thinking they're not going to beat the Cardinals this week. They come back and play a great defensive game last week. They held Kyler Murray in check very nicely.
They're another team that does very well against mobile quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You throw a mobile quarterback, Belichick is able to take that away. And I think they will beat the Chargers in LA this week. It might be the one of the biggest coaching mismatches in history.
Well, we're going to get to coaches in a minute. Some guy's in trouble. I think he's on top of the list. Well, maybe not the top, but
he just makes such bad in-game decisions. It's funny when I've always laughed at fans who think they know better. They could coach better than the actual coach because they can't. They just don't have all that. But I think in this case they can.
Yeah. It's funny. They found they haven't played bad football at times. Herbert's played very well.
I think,
but they find all kinds of different ways to lose.
I think he's rookie of the year, Justin Herbert. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
But their defense can't hold anybody under 27 points. So and then they screw it up. They give it away at the end of the game because he's terrible. And in this age of analytics, where you should know what you're going to do with every situation, right, in the game going in. It's almost like you've got a little clipboard there and you're taking it off. There's no excuse for that. You should be prepared to make that right decision every day. It's not a gamble anymore. You almost play the odds. And I mean, they call Riverboat Ron, but at least he had reasons for gambling. It's not even that he's gambling. He's just making the wrong decision all the time. If I'll go back back in the 80s when Parcells was coaching the Giants, he had a guy who was a clock guy and the situation guy, situational football guy, who would be able to answer all those questions. And you know who that guy was?
Tom Coughlin.
Ray Hanley.
Ray Hanley, really?
Ray Hanley, who became one of the worst coaches in the history of the NFL, head coaches, was his brains on the sideline. Hanley was the guy who, in a tight situation, who would basically say, "Here's the information. This is so you know what to do," and then he would make the decision based on the information. But it was Hanley who was doing that. Now, a lot of teams, a lot of coaches had guys like that on the sidelines. So, it's probably too late for Anthony Lynn because he would get fired. But if Anthony Lynn could do it all over again, he really should have one of those guys who's in his ear telling him what to do, because he can't do it on his own.
Yeah. Well, before we leave the AFC, we can't leave without talking about the Jets a little bit. I mean, obviously, he should be at the top of the list of coaches in trouble. And I keep reading articles this week where he may come back. I don't understand that reasoning at all.
I have. They're the Jets. That's a 3-word answer to that. They're the Jets. Yeah. They do jet-like things, but he should have been fired already. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing there right now. It's a dead team walking, basically, and he just came out and said that he screwed up the Darnold situation, right?
No kidding.
This week, yeah, he said I let him down it, and I was brought in here to make him a good quarterback, and I failed him. He said he failed him. So let's say he just fired himself.
Yeah, right. Right. He came to that revelation about 2 years too late.
Fired yet? I mean, it's so obvious, And they gave him a shot. I mean, it's not like he didn't have a shot. just going to get it done. And it's not like injuries or anything. It's just like, he did a terrible job with the material he had. Not that he had great material, but it wasn't winless season material. When he going into the year, you didn't look at the Jets and some years, like when the Browns were just awful, you'd say, oh, I don't know if they're going to win a game. You didn't think that about the Jets this year going in. You said, they're probably, maybe they'll be 500, probably not, but you didn't say, oh, I don't think they'll win a game. And so he's been awful. That's all I could say about that. But they are the Jets. They are a inept franchise from top to bottom.
I just have this recurring, I don't know if it's a dream or a nightmare, that they bring Jim Harbaugh in to coach Trevor Lawrence next year. I don't know whether there's anything to that. I don't know if you hear anything in those.
Harbaugh wants to leave Ann Arbor, but yeah, that would. I don't know how he'd fly in New York either. That might be a bad mix.
Yeah, he does.
But then again, the media's not around anyway, so what do you have to worry about? They're all on Zoom calls.
Yeah. Well, that's true. He needs to go back to the khakis. I think that's what happened. He changed his wardrobe, and things just went all to hell in Michigan this year. So,
yeah.
Let's move on to the NFC a little bit. So, obviously, there's some good teams there. I mean, the Saints keep doing it without. Again, we talked about the Bills, kind of changing their MO as far as winning games with defense and now winning with offense. The Saints' defense has played really well. They're winning games without Breeze.
Yes. They've come on. They're probably the best balanced team in the NFC, at least. I don't see a super team in the NFC.
No.
Obviously, you look at the Chiefs as maybe being a cut above, and then the Steelers kind of maybe just being just right there with them. But you don't see that standout team in the NFC. When you look at the NFC, you see a lot of flawed teams. And I think the teams that stand out as being the best balanced teams are the Saints and the Rams.
Yeah, I agree. The Rams, every time I think they're just, they're 7-4, and they've lost some games that are just, they probably should not have lost. Another guy I love, the coach, is McVay. I just love his approach. And I think
I don't like Jared. I don't love Jared Goff.
Yeah, I think McVay, when they win, when they play well, it's because he puts them in a position. He puts Goff in a position to succeed. And when he's out of his comfort zone, he's obviously not that good.
Right. He starts forcing things.
Yeah.
Not as badly as Carson Wentz forces things, but I think, but with Darnold in that front line, I think they could be a dangerous playoff team.
Can the Seahawks?
They have some balance between offense and defense. Seattle doesn't have that.
No defense, right?
Right. They're getting better, but they're against a top team and a top quarterback. They'll get taken apart. I mean, put Aaron Rodgers against that secondary, and
I would say, to me, they're the only teams that are really going to contend. Is there a surprise you see in the NFC? I mean, the Bucs. We'll talk about the Buccaneers.
I don't know. The Bucs are just they're disappointing. When you mentioned disappointments, I expected more of that. Brady isn't Brady of old, but it's weird how they have been able to get more going with that offense with all the people they have there. And it may not be I don't know, maybe it's not a match between him and Bruce Arians.
No, I think something there. I think that's it. It's a bad fit. Arians wants to throw the ball. What's his catchphrase? No risk it, no biscuit, right? He wants to throw the ball down the field all the time, and that's not Tom's game.
No, that's not Tom's game at all. And I don't think you do that with a quarterback of that age. You take advantage of his knowledge and his expertise and the way he reads defenses. You don't, Justin Herbert, you do that with his arm, but Brady's best asset certainly isn't his arm now. So why don't you take advantage of his best asset? And that's kind of his experience in reading defenses and picking on all that underneath stuff. His timing is still good. I mean, you look at him in games. I mean, he gets the ball there, delivers it well, but sometimes his receivers aren't on the same page with him either.
Yeah.
A lot of times it happens, and he's, you see him on the sidelines and talking about that. Never happened in New England. He was on, well, at least not last year, but in those prior years, he was always on point with the receivers, and he was the guy that was getting them on point too.
I don't think these two guys survive each other. I think one or both is going to be gone after the. I mean, if Tom's got $25 million coming, he'll probably be back. But
Yeah.
Arians may be gone because their camps are now sniping at each other. Arian says, we gave you everything. His camp. He's not. Well, sometimes he says it himself. That's the ironic thing, right? Brady left. Supposedly, one of the big reasons he left, he was tired of Bill Belichick. Harping on him and beating up, treating him like everybody else in practice. But I don't remember in 20 years Bill Belichick calling out Tom Brady in public once. Happens on a weekly basis.
Never calls out any of his players.
No, it happens on a weekly basis now, and I think the Brady camp's fighting back, saying, you knew what you had here, and you're not using the guy the right way. And then Arian says, well, Tom picks the plays during the week, and he's got the ability to change the calls at the line, and a lot of finger pointing. It feels like going back between.
Yeah, that's got to be, that can't come out in the open. Once that happens, then you're right. Somebody's got to go.
Yeah, that's going to be the guy who thinks he's better than he is, and that's the guy with the funny hat in my mind. But I kind of liked him before this year. It hasn't clicked.
I thought it would. I thought that he was a smart enough offensive coach to use Brady the way he should be used.
Yeah,
than, Kurt Warner.
Well, what's what good coaches do, right? I mean, look at the Patriots again. To back up for a second, the reason they were so successful for so long is they didn't stick to one system. They adjusted the personnel year after year.
Absolutely. Year to year, you're right, and but also, he always had a plan, and he was always able to bring in players and then let the players adjust to the system while the system adjusted to the players. It was remarkable the way there were always good fits. Let me put it, always good fits, one way or another with Belichick. The right guy was in the right position.
You're right,
and that's why he's such a good coach. But it's not only a good system; it's good players that he brings in to match the system.
Right. So we talked about the better teams in the AFC. As we said, there's nobody that stands really head and shoulders above anybody else. I mean, is there anybody here?
Well, we didn't mention the Packers, actually.
Surprise us and make a run.
The Packers, I think, could obviously make a run with Rodgers. Although, again, they got questions on defense. Yeah. But he's having a remarkable season. What's he got? 32 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's wow. So. If it came down to the championship game, should come down to the Packers and the Saints. Again, where's that going to be held? Well, right now it looks like New Orleans, right?
Right.
If it ended up in Lambeau, then that would make it for a really interesting game.
It would, especially if it's about 20 below zero, right? So.
Yeah. So we'd see how that thing went. But yeah, so that's the toss up there. I guess you're about to talk about the NFC East, right?
Unfortunately, there's some law that says if you talk about the NFL, you have to talk about the NFC East. So let's go there.
Who wins?
You know what? I'll tell you what. I think right now, and I hate to say it, I think the best team in the division is the Giants. I think they're playing the best football. And the team formerly known as the Redskins have been a bit of a surprise too.
The team formerly known as the Redskins has the best unit of all of those. What are the 4 teams, 8 units? The one really legitimate unit is the Redskins, is the Washington defense.
Mm-hmm.
The burgundy and gold.
The division then?
Defense. And I think that's why I give them an outside chance of beating the Steelers on Monday, with the pass rush getting after Roethlisberger a little bit. They got a really good pass rush, and their defense is coming. And the other thing about that defense is with Alex Smith has kind of steadied things on offense. So the defense is not staying on the field as long as they normally did.
Yeah.
So they're a little fresher. They're getting a little better, and Smith is managing the game. And I think they have so you look at the Giants' schedule. They've got 4 winning teams, and then they finish with the Cowboys at home. Are they already winnable games? They got to go to Seattle. No, I don't think they win that game this week. They may cover. I think they're getting 10 points or something.
Yeah.
So they got. Yeah. Let me look at the schedule. So it's Seattle, Cardinals. Now the Cardinals are kind of they're crumbling a little bit, but still, they're they're much better team than the Giants. Kyler Murray will do something against that defense.
Yeah.
The Brownies and the Ravens. You know, the Ravens are still going to be back. They're going to be fighting clawing at the end of the year. So, do they win any of those games? Do they beat the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Browns, or the Ravens? You give them a shot to win any of those. Maybe an outside shot to beat the Brownies, the Cardinals, but I don't see them winning any of those games. So then they have Dallas. So they got one more victory. So that gives them 5, right? So Washington goes to Pittsburgh. Then they play the 49ers on the road, but still the 49ers, you never know what's going on with them.
No, it depends on their health in a lot of cases.
Maybe somebody else gets hurt. Then they have the Seahawks at home. And then they finish. Then they have Carolina and the Eagles. So, can the Redskins, or the team formerly known as the Redskins, win 2 of those games? 49ers, Seahawks, Panthers, Steelers, 49ers, Panthers, Redskins, Panthers, Eagles.
They could win 3 of those games.
They could win. I think they can win 2.
Yeah.
So, okay. I mean, obviously they're tied with the Giants, so they need to win the game, win outright. And then the Eagles, they're done. They're just done. I don't even have to look at their schedule. They're done. And then the other team that actually, if they ever got things together, the Cowboys can end up winning this thing.
They say that week after week.
Well, look at what they've got. They've got the Ravens this week, right?
No.
What's the situation with the Ravens? Are they getting any of those guys back? What's going on with them?
Well, if it's still 2 weeks, it's possible they're not going to. Well, what's that game going to be played now? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what kind of roster they're going to field, right? I mean, the Ravens should win the game, obviously, but stranger things have happened. Then they have the Bengals without Joe Burrow. Then they have the Niners. Then they have the Eagles. Then they finish with the Giants. That's the easiest schedule of all of them, really.
Yeah.
So how many winnable games there? They should beat the Bengals and they should beat the Eagles. And then, maybe they'll beat the Giants by that time. Maybe by that time they'll get the offense rolling a little bit, and now Andy Dalton will have things to settle down. And so if the Cowboys. Let me put it this way. If the Cowboys could get their crap together, they have a really good shot at winning the NFC East.
So the big question is, they win the NFC East, and it's like a participation trophy at this point. Can they win a playoff game?
Well, yeah. You want to get the 3rd seed, actually. That's what you're looking for.
Well, right.
Forget the bye. Get the 3rd seed so you can play the NFC East.
Can they actually none of those teams have a chance to win a game in the playoffs, right?
No way.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No.
You would have surprised the heck out of me, Hank.
Well, who could be the 3rd seed? Well, they will be the 3rd. What am I talking about? They're going to be the 4th seed. I'm thinking, what a stupid ass I am.
Yeah, they're going to get a game at home.
So you want to be the wild card. You want to be the 3rd wild card. I guess you want to be the first wild card.
Yeah, right? The first wild card would get that game.
The first wild card to play the NFC East team. Yeah. So that's what you're going for. Everybody's going to rejigger their schedule to try to be the first wild card.
You get to the last week, you might have some teams tanking games just so to move up and down in this.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I would ask you who the big disappointments are, but I think it's obvious to me. The big disappointments in the NFC are the Cowboys, the Eagles, and you can throw the Bucks in there too. But anything else stand out to you there as disappointments?
The Vikings a little bit.
Yeah, Vikings, yeah.
A little bit. I mean, the Niners, but that's all injury related.
Yeah, agreed.
They're the defending NFC champs, but they just got battered.
You think Jimmy G?
I think he's done a great job. Shanahan's done a fantastic job being able to do what they've done.
I agree. Even without the injuries, though, there's some question out there, when you read the local articles out there about whether Jimmy G's the answer.
Yeah.
I'd love to see
him. I don't have the answer last year.
I know.
If he was the answer last year, why can't he be the answer next year if he's healthy again?
I don't get it. I mean, he's been hurt, and if if he hasn't been hurt, all the players around him have been hurt. And if they want to cut ties with him, I can think of a team back east here who might like to have him back. So
that could work. Yeah,
yeah,
that could work. Otherwise, disappointments. What about in the NFC South? Yeah. Well, obviously we mentioned the Bucks, and in the North, the Vikings. I don't think the Bears are that much of a disappointment. I didn't give them. And by the way, that's the next Matt to go, Matt Nagy.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the coaches in a little bit and get your thumbs up or thumb down on whether they're going to keep their job. So while we're still on this, who is your Super Bowl matchup right now, today, as we talk?
I'll go with the Chiefs. Actually, I think the Steelers would be better off not being undefeated when they play them.
I would agree.
So yeah, so the Chiefs Saints Super Bowl.
It'll be a good one. Who's going to win?
Chiefs will win.
I still have the Chiefs winning myself.
I think the Chiefs and Steelers are the two best teams in football right now.
You know, I'm not big on awards, but I mean, who do you? I mean, it's a great race for the MVP. You know, with you got Mahomes, you got Rodgers. You said having a great year. Russell Wilson. It's hard to believe the man's never gotten a vote for the MVP. One of the most shocking statistics I read this year, that the man has never gotten a
that's amazing.
vote for MVP.
Yeah.
Who do you see?
We got 5 more games to play, so we'll see. But you know, if you took Mahomes out of the Chiefs, they're not half the team. I mean, I'd still go with Patrick Mahomes. He's the best player in football.
Yeah, he's my guy too.
At that.
So let's talk a little bit. Well, we stay with the NFL for a couple more minutes. We talked about coaches in trouble. Obviously, they've already made changes in Texas and Detroit and the Falcons. I'll throw a few other teams out there, and you tell me if their coaches are staying or going. Some of them are kind of obvious. The Jaguars.
I love Doug Marrone, but I think he's on his way out.
Yeah, I know your answer on the Chargers and Anthony Lynn. He's got to be gone, right?
I would hope so.
And how about Peterson?
Ownership is kind of loyal to him. I mean, he won a Super Bowl.
I just think he's made a mess of that thing there myself. Somebody's got to take the blame.
I'm not saying he shouldn't go.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking about how looking at him, whether they'll give him another shot. But he has made a mess of it. Yeah.
Well, some of these guys are going to maybe get a COVID-19 pass anyway, because the season's been so disrupted. Nagy, you just talked about a little bit. Is he going to stay?
He's done. In fact, you want a good bet? I love the Lions this week.
Interesting.
I love the Lions.
Who's the interim there?
Because they're rid of Patricia, and usually you get a bump the first week you play with your new coach. Usually look at all the records from it happened again with Romeo this year, right? With Romeo Cornell when O'Brien was. So anyway, I do like that. But and again, when you look at the Bears, they're a mess. And Nagy's ripped his team this past week after the disaster. And
once you do that, you're in trouble.
So he's got to be on his way out. But then again, that may be the worst. There's a lot of bad offenses this year when you think about. Are the Bears and the Jets the worst offense in football? I don't know. That's a good one.
True.
Doesn't matter who Bears, Trubisky, Foles, whatever.
Yeah,
they're bad.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, well, obviously Gaze has got to go. No matter what I'm reading, and if he stays, if I'm a Jet fan, I just got to be like questioning why.
No, he's got to go. I think he will go.
Any other coaches you see in trouble at all?
Not really.
Well, Arians we talked about, I guess, but
Bruce Arians is the only other guy. I mean, Carolina. I like the guy in Carolina. I think he's done a really good job. He's a really good coach. I don't know what they're going to do with Romeo. That's the other thing.
I was going to go there next. I mean, I've heard a lot of rumors that because of the COVID-19 situation and not being able to bring guys in to interview, that they may keep him for another year, right?
Right, that wouldn't be the worst decision. He's done a pretty decent job with that team. And then the other interim coach, Raheem Morris, and I think Raheem Morris has really done a good job with, and he's got head coach experience before that, so I think he's a guy. I think they might stay with Raheem.
That's a crazy team too, man. I'll tell you, they have a lot of talent there. They've scored more points than they've given up, and they're 4-7. That's kind of hard to do.
Well, they were giving up games remember they were just blowing games in the final.
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, Quinn should have got fired. There's another guy who should have got fired long before he did. I mean, that guy's blown more big leads in games and in very big games, obviously.
He could have been fired last year. Remember how they rallied around him at the end of the year and basically saved the job? He could have been gone last year.
So Morris and Romeo could stay.
I think they'll stay. I mean, I don't know the situation in Houston. I think, let me just say, I think it's 60-40. They'll keep Romeo because of the reasons you said, and I think he's a good. He's also old though. You know,
yeah,
what do you you're only how many more years are you going to get Romeo? Do you want to get onto your next guy now? So that's the other question with Romeo.
Romeo's always done better as an interim than he has the permanent coach too. So
yeah.
Who's the big name? Who's the big name we should watch? Maybe, again, talking about the Texans or anybody who sticks with an interim. I mean, if Eric Bieniemy or somebody like this is ready to be a head coach, I mean, can you let him go somewhere else just because you think, we got to wait a year because of the whole COVID situation? We'll let Romeo stick around.
You get the guy now. That's what I'm saying. I mean, if Romeo, like I said, if Romeo was younger, there's more reason to stick with him. But if you could get your guy, you get him. Same with the 49ers defensive core. I think it looks like he's bound for the Lions. Robert Salah, whatever his name is pronounced.
Niners. Well, we're on the coaching situation. Obviously, we just talked about Matt Rule. I think that was a great hire. I think that team's is heading in the right direction. They played some good games this year. I thought the record might be a little better, but I'm not really worried about the record there. I think he's going to be a good coach. Anybody you see making the jump from college this year? Lincoln Riley is always going to be mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one guy that stands out.
Day's name comes up now and again. Ohio State coach.
Yeah, he could be. It looks like they've gotten, when they look for a college coach, they usually go for innovators.
Yeah.
Like a Kingsbury. Yeah. There's another guy from the coaching tree, the Belichick coaching tree, who's done a pretty decent job.
Yes, we can count. I mean, I do cheat a little too, and I do count Mike Vrabel, even though he didn't coach for Belichick. He was kind of a coach in the field.
Well, Vrabel bought the Patriots way to Tennessee. It's worked there because he has a different type of roster makeup. He's got this tough physical thing, and they kind of rally around that. A lot of now we're always on Belichick, aren't we? A lot of the other guys that didn't work out went to more of a finesse. They were more finesse teams,
Yeah.
I think the Lions are more of a finesse team, and Patricia that was a bad fit. And Josh McDaniels in Denver, that was more of a finesse team, and that really didn't fit. So I think Vrabel and the Belichick system works better with a physical, team like the Titans because that's your personality. So that fits in with a hard-nosed kind of coach.
McDaniel's a good name to bring up. I mean, his name came up again last year. He interviewed for a couple of spots. I thought myself, after the whole Colt fiasco, that he'd never get another shot unless it was replacing Belichick. But do you think he will get that shot?
I'm sorry, who?
Josh McDaniel.
Oh, Josh. I think people see him as a great offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they see him as a head coach.
Some guys just are, right? Patricia's a great defensive coordinator. Romeo Crennel is a great defensive coordinator. Charlie Weiss is a great offensive coordinator. You just talked about McDaniels. Some guys, that's just their fit.
Jim Schwartz, although Schwartz hasn't done a very good job.
Schwartz, another good example.
who didn't work out as a head coach. So
happens a lot. Before we wrap up the NFL, I mean, is there any other thoughts you have on the season, or what's still to come that we haven't kind of covered here?
Well, I think there's going to be more COVID, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the big challenge, jiggering the schedule, keeping it on track. And like I said, I think they've done a really good job. I think obviously the NFL is the one sport that is been the most normal, at least.
Yeah.
It's the flow is there. It's week to week. The games are being played. They're not in bubbles. They're playing.
They feel normal when you're watching them too, and maybe it's just the way the games are shot, right? But even with the empty stadiums, don't feel. Baseball felt, it just felt empty. It didn't feel right. But football really hasn't felt the same way.
No, again, you could write. It's tighter shots too. You're right with the TV, so you don't notice the fans as much. But and then they do pump in some noise, so it seems like there's something going on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does appear to be more normal than some of the other sports. I mean, basketball.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Like, yeah, is this really happening? I don't think people even paid attention that much to it. So at least I know football, and again with the betting and with betting being legalized in so many states, I think you tune in, you watch football. Everybody watches every game. I mean, I watch the Red Zone, basically. That's what I do on the.
Yeah, I don't have it anymore. I used to, and I started streaming and got rid of all my cable boxes, so I don't have the Red Zone anymore. But when the Patriots weren't on, that's how I watch football. I'd watch the Red Zone. I love it.
Yeah, you watch the Red Zone and get every game, what's going on. You see every big play. And obviously there's just more fan interest in the NFL week to week because of that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's move on. I promised you that we would talk about the Masters, and I want to talk about the Masters. I don't know, when I asked you for your about being on, and I asked you for a couple of sleepers. I know you got them to me late. I don't even remember who they were, but I did horrible. I flamed out of my pool, something terrible. I had 3 guys miss the cut.
Yeah, I think I had Xander and Finau gave you my sleeper.
That sounds about right. I don't know where I would have improved my position that much anyway. So, but I appreciate it.
Well, that was a one man show at Augusta.
Yeah. So we talked about earlier that the fact that you didn't cover it in person, couldn't cover it in person. You had to cover it from your couch. Obviously, I'll be honest with you, it was hard. It was a harder watch for me than it would normally be because of being played in November. Just football going on. The times were different. Obviously, it was over at 4:00, I think, on Sunday. The course played totally different. I mean, 20 under Dustin Johnson shoots is just phenomenal. So the greens are softer, not as fast as we talked about before. And the azaleas aren't in bloom, and there's no crowds, and the course looks different with no crowds, right? Just when you're seeing the shots, the course looks different. What was your takeaway from the whole event?
I mean, DeChambeau could have used the gallery when he lost his embedded ball on the 3rd hole.
Right.
If there was a gallery there, they would have found the ball. He wouldn't have been penalized.
I mean, he went in everybody's favorite too.
I thought they did the best they could. I'm glad they put it on in November. It still was a Masters. It was a different Masters, but it was still the golf course. You knew when they got to 13, it was a par 5. That's the one thing about the Masters. It's the one major they play at the same place every year, so you know the holes.
Yeah.
I mean, Winged Foot, people might know Winged Foot, but they don't know it by heart. And the Masters, it still played, even though the course played very easy and the scoring records were set everywhere. You knew the holes. You knew that the 12th hole was still going to be tricky, which it was with the winds. And so there was still that element to it. So I didn't think it was completely a different Masters, outside of the fact that the course played a lot easier with the softness of the greens.
I mean, is Johnson just the best player in the world? I mean, everybody thought Chambeau was going to tear this course apart, and he played well. 10 under is pretty good in the Masters, right? But
Well, the difference between DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson is that Dustin Johnson respected the golf course a little more and played smarter. And I mean, he was laying up on some par fives. DeChambeau was just swinging from the heels every time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always work at it. It worked at Winged Foot, but Augusta's a different golf course. It has to be managed a little. It could still be overpowered. I mean, Tiger overpowered it back in his day. Jack did too. But you have to be smart about it too. You just can't be swinging for the fences and everything. Perfect example: 13, first day. He gets the DeChambeau 13. He tries to pull that fill shot out of the pine straw. And where does he hit? It hits a long left into the azaleas. Now, if that was at Winged Foot in a U.S. Open, there's no azaleas back there. There's no, there. You don't have to worry about that. And if it was a normal U.S. Open, he's hitting it into the grandstand there. So you gotta think about what you're doing at Augusta National. The other thing was he's on the driving range on a Wednesday, DeChambeau, and he's still figuring out what shaft he's going to put in his driver. You can't do that on Wednesday. You have to come there on Sunday with a game plan and committed to your game plan, know exactly what you're going to do and what equipment you're going to use. You can't be fooling around with that on Wednesday. So I think he learned a little bit. It's going to be very interesting to see how DeChambeau's approach in April when we reconvene at Augusta National and see if he's learned anything and if he's going to just change a few things, tweak things here and there in his mental approach. But your question about Dustin Johnson being the best player in the game right now, absolutely. And I think a lot of that is because he's become a much better game manager. He's smarter on the golf course. And he's just learned by experience. He should have more majors than he has right now, obviously. Yeah. He gave a lot of them away. But I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think he knows how to win a major now.
And this isn't probably a fair question, but I'll ask it anyway. I mean, does this tournament play out any differently? I mean, obviously the scores would probably play out differently, but how much differently you would think it would have played out if it was played in April?
I got to think back to who was hot back then.
Yeah.
I mean, coming into it, the scores would have been depending on. I don't remember what the week of the Masters was like. What the weather was like that week, because
it's hard to remember.
Yeah, because that usually affects it. If you get some bad weather in there or it plays hard and fast, scores are much higher. So I don't remember how it was, but I think I'll tell you one thing: Brooks Koepka would have been a factor.
Yeah, that was the guy I was going to ask you about. Yeah,
right. He would have been healthy. So he wouldn't have had that knee thing. So he would have been more of a factor. And I think he would have been actually the guy that everybody was looking at coming in, all based on last year's majors. You would have said Koepka would be the favorite coming in. Tiger probably would have had a better chance in April than he did in November, even though he had one really good round this year. The opening round was pretty impressive. And after that, not so much. But I think his back went too. And maybe in April he would have had a better way of preparing for the Masters. It would have been better rode in than he had in November. So he might have been more of a factor in April as well.
What's up with the guys bulking up? Like Koepka was the first guy I can comes to mind, but now DeChambeau looks like a different guy over the last 6 months.
Well, he's crazy. What he's steaks and eggs and protein shakes and everything else. He's taking it to another level. But it started with Tiger. I mean, when you look at Tiger in '97 and all the guys he was playing with, you don't have any lumpies anymore. You don't have any Tim Herons, Lumpy, or Craig Walrus. There's nobody's going to be nicknamed the Walrus or Lumpy from now on. The guys that are coming up, they're all slim bodies. They're in the gym all the time, and Tiger's the one that drove everybody in the gym. So I remember writing at that point that there was soon one of these days the golf is going to be taken over by super athletes, tight ends, football tight ends will be playing golf. Wow. And that's what Kanye had with Koepka. He's more of a strong safety. I don't know what DeChambeau is. He's turning himself into a nose tackle right now.
Oh my gosh.
But you wonder where the game's going to be. And that was the fear. Where's the game going to be in 15 or 20 years if if there are going to be more and more of these DeChambeaus come in and who just, you know, takes skill out of the game and make it into just brute strength.
Well, yeah, the equipment on top of it. I mean, it's just the game's changed so much.
It's the golf ball.
And the golf ball, yeah.
Yeah. If you know, that's the question. Will the ruling bodies of golf, you can't do it with the everyday golfer, but that's the problem. They don't want to bifurcate. They don't want to make separate rules for tour players and amateurs. So, but if they could roll back the golf ball, it would be actually better if they just brought back the golf ball a little bit for the pros. That may be what they're going to end up having to do, because it's just going to get more and more and more, and distance. And look at DeChambeau. Now he was talking about that 48-inch driver so that he could get his swing speed. He had a swing speed of 140 miles an hour on the range. 140 miles an hour. That's amazing. Crazy. And but do you know what it takes? Pro V1s. A lot of amateurs play Pro V1s, right? You know the swing speed you need to activate the core of a Pro V1 to get that effect where it comes in and boom, right? You need a swing speed of 115 miles an hour to activate a Pro V1 and to get the added distance out of it. Otherwise, it's just pretty much like any other golf. It's a very good golf ball, but it's kind of like any other golf. It's not going to be any longer for you unless you swing at 115 miles an hour. But if you swing at 140 miles an hour, boy, you're sending that golf ball an awful long way. So now
I take it.
Huh? I don't have that anymore. I don't have 140 miles an hour. I had 100 at one point. I don't have that anymore. But yeah. So it's a question. The golf ball is the big question. Jack Nicklaus always said that. Gary Player's saying it now. Yeah. It's the golf ball more than the golf club, because these guys are just their swing speeds are crazy, off the charts. So.
Well, before I let you go, I have one more question. And I think that's a great thing. I think they're doing next year with Lee Elder joining Jack and Gary Player as the starters. So that's just cool. A couple quick thoughts on that.
Oh, it's very cool. I think it was a very historic moment as the first black player at Augusta National, and where else are you going to look? We can bring in. And when I first started covering, it was Sam Snead and Gene Sarazen, which was kind of cool. And then it was Arnie. Once Arnie left, and now it's just Jack and Gary. I think Lee Elder is a very good choice, because it just changed the whole historical path of Augusta National. So,
agreed.
It's a nice gesture.
Yeah, agreed. Because even when he broke that barrier, they still had a long ways to go for many, many, decades after that. They still have had.
Really, basically.
Yeah, good point. Is it? You think that's going to be a yearly thing, or is it just a 1 year and done?
No.
It will be yearly. That's good. That's good to know. I thought I'd read something that it was going to be a one and done. Somebody had commented. So
they'll bring him in for a year. Yeah, why not? It kind of stink if you told them, "Oh, we don't want you back next year."
That would be a little awkward, right?
Yeah. Thank you for coming. Arrive home safely. Yeah.
Right. Well, Hank, I appreciate you coming in. You're actually my second-time guest, if that makes any sense. But you are my second-time guest. I enjoy having you on. I hope, who knows, maybe we get towards the Super Bowl time. We'll have you on again and chat a little about that. But I like reading your articles. Oh, everybody reads City of Champions, obviously. And how's the second book coming?
Good question. I don't have an answer for you on that. Okay. It would hit a little snag. We'll get through it, but I can't tell you that there's going to be a definite. It'll get written. I just can't tell you what the publication date is going to be. It might be rolled back. COVID had a lot to do with it. I'll say that. Well, it just set back research and everything else. So it's not. The momentum isn't there right now. But I got to dig back into that. So, but I don't have any news to report on the progress of that one.
No worries.
So, but I appreciate you having me on City of Champions. We're still doing. it's still a good Christmas gift because the game was played on Christmas Day. So if anybody wants to go out there and look at it as a Christmas gift, it's a nice stocking stuffer.
I would agree. As I said when you were on the first time, it was a great read, and I really encourage anybody to go get it. As Hank said, as a stocking stuffer, any football fan, and I think it's for non-football fans too. I don't think you have to be a football fan to actually enjoy this book. So
yeah, it's a really good look at the nation during the coming out of the Depression, going into World War II. It's a good snapshot of two distinctly different parts of the country, and how and again the greatest generation in the making, and the kids that played in this game were the kids that fought World War II. So there's an element there too.
Agreed. It was a great read. Get out there and buy it. Hank Gola, I appreciate you coming on today. You and your family have a safe and happy holiday season, and we'll talk soon.
You. Same to you and everybody out there. We'll see what happens with the NFL season.
Yeah. Good luck with the predictions going forward. You're killing me.
Yeah. Okay. Over unders. Remember, pick the totals, not the sides. That's my advice.
I'm going to do that this weekend. Thank you.
My closing advice.
Have a great day. Thanks, Hank. Bye-bye.
Take care.
My guest, Hank Gola, still writing for the New York Daily News, covered the Masters this year. We talked about everything we can think about for the NFL. I hope we covered the questions you might have had. Make comments. I appreciate everybody that's in. Dave Guyette, my dad. Hi, Dad. Always here every week. Love him. Frank is in. Frank is a newbie to the show. He might be a friend of Hank's, but I hope Frank, you'll continue. I hope you'll follow the show and watch our other shows and share this with your friends. Guys, it was a great interview, I think, with Frank. I hadn't had Frank on. I had Hank on. It was a great interview. We covered everything in the NFL you could possibly think of. I think maybe we missed a few things, but the things that are important were covered. And we'll have Hank on again. And next week, we'll have Roy White in here. Do not forget. It's going to be a great interview with Roy. And Sunday, I'll be on my normal Sunday Stream of Consciousness show. I hope you'll join me then, 9:00 Eastern time. We're going to cover the crazy college football season as that continues, the NFL as we talked about today, and if any other big stories come up as well. Also be looking for my vlog. I didn't post my vlog yet. I did a nice vlog, an interesting vlog, I think, on the Tom Brady, Bruce Arians situation. So jump on, take a look at that later when I get it posted. You guys have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.